We're singing. We're singing. Dun, 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 dun. Time to talk. Beauty and the Bitch.
Morgan.
Oh, hey.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
So, girl, I have the best thing to tell you.
Tell me.
You're going to be so excited. Okay, so first of all, I had a dream about you.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I know, I am the sweetest. I do think of you from time to time, even when we're not being recorded.
But only when you're unconscious. I love it.
Yes. Consciously, I put you out of my mind, but that's neither
fair.
here nor there.
That's fair.
No, so I had this amazing dream, girl. And let me tell you, you're going to love it because you were Nicole Kidman.
Okay. Nicole Kidman is a literal goddess. I love what you're saying, where you're going, that hair, that style, that girl. I get it.
I figured you'd be very pleased. So anyway, you were Nicole Kidman in The Golden Compass. So you were evil and hateful.
Okay.
Actually, to be honest with you, it's less that you were Nicole Kidman and it's more that you were the movie, The Golden Compass, as in, you know, unimpressive and didn't live up to expectations and was hated by all Christians. So you're a shitbag. I'm just saying you're a shitbag. You're a shit rat.
It feels really not good. You know what I mean? Like,
well, would you feel better if I said you're a shit bird? I mean, you can be any kind of shit animal or shit object. Shit tree, shit car. You're Morgie. You're a shit cart. You're a shit Starbucks. You know, whatever you want, girl. I mean, I'm not trying to tell you what to be. I'm just saying I had a dream about you.
My understanding of our friendship is that it's not a good one. It's very unkind.
You know, my understanding of our friendship is everyone always thinks I'm the villain, but they don't see you tasing me when we get off the air. That's what they don't see. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, if I'm fucking Mrs. Coulter, Nicole Kidman, and the Golden Compass shitbag movie all wrapped up into one, you're Sansa from books 1 through 3 is all I fucking know. Before she had her renaissance.
Oh, I know you did not just call me Sansa.
Yeah,
You've been sitting on that. You've been sitting on that for about a year since the first time I done called you Sansa. I called you Sansa. You're Sansa.
But I'm Sansa today. I'm today's Sansa.
Oh, you know what? I wish we were talking about Game of Thrones today. Even shitty ass season 8, as opposed to this broke down ass Golden Compass.
So it's a really interesting thing because a lot of people know the Golden Compass from the defunct film that happened that Nicole Kidman starred in as Mrs. Coulter. And there was a couple other pretty well-known people. It was a pretty financially well-produced film that nobody in the world liked.
It was great. You know, actually, real quickly, welcome back to another episode of Beauty and the Bitch. I'm Mick, and that's Mrs. Coulter over there.
Okay, my name is Morgan, and I take it to that.
Is it Mrs. Coulter or Miss Coulter? Is she married?
She was married to Lord Asriel, but I don't know.
Really? I don't remember that shit. Anyway, okay, you're right. You're Morgan. I like you way more than Miss Coulter. Not that that's saying a lot, but you're welcome, my friend.
A low bar.
Yeah, very, yeah. So back to the movie, though. As you were saying, it was hated by everyone. And, you know, I kind of expected all Christians, and frankly, anyone who's religious, even if they're not Christian, if they're part of an organized religion, I kind of expected them to hate it. But even, like, the atheists hated it, the fantasy lovers hated it, the Nicole Kidman lovers hated it. It was a panned movie. Panned.
Yeah. It only has 42% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is pretty generous.
I think so, too. I think that's a 33% movie to me. I mean, it was... Well, what was it about it, do you think, that made it so disliked?
I think that's a really good question because they had the star power and because I think it's a good storyline. Like, I enjoy the books. And I think that there's a lot to work with there. So it's hard for me as a person who, number one, hasn't watched 100% of the movie in a long time. I watched part of it recently, but it like the dialogue is clunky and the relationships feel forced, and I feel like it feels so unknown. Like they just throw you into the world. They don't do a ton of world building, but then they also just don't explain shit. And then they're like, and here's a Texan with a hot air balloon. And people are like, but why?
Yeah, where did he come from? Yeah. Well, actually, Morgan, tell them why you only saw a part of it, though, because I think that's important.
Lol. So I was committed to rewatching this film for this podcast because, again, it's been like a decade. It came out in 2007, and that's when I saw it. I started it, and I sat on the couch, and like maybe 15 minutes into it, I fell asleep. And when I woke up, I was like, it's not worth it.
No.
It's just
No.
not.
I think that's the natural response to this movie. I agree with everything you said, and I think the world building point is especially astute because they do very little of that altogether. Though I will say, I think the books could do a better job of world building too, but, we'll get to the books, I think, in a sec. But I found that movie to be so slow and clunky dialogue. You're absolutely right. For all those good actors, who directed it? Do you know off the top of your head?
It is directed by Chris Weitz, who is a person I'm not really familiar with.
Well, and there's a reason for that, honey, because damn. I mean, I would say the directing was inferior. I mean, that's what I would have to point to. Or maybe it happened in editing. Maybe the editors fucked it up, Something went wrong. And another thing I think is wrong with it, I just love talking about shit I hate. Oh, it's one of my greatest joys. There's not a lot of it. No, I mean, genuinely, because that is the backbone of that whole series. I mean, that's what gives it, just like religion in the Chronicles of Narnia gives it resonance, in the His Dark Materials series by Philip Pullman, the anti-religion current, which gets stronger in each of the three books,
yes,
that's what gives it some heft and some depth. And they were afraid of
the moral
compass
off. Of this story. Like,
absolutely,
the like opposition to religion is the moral compass of the whole series.
Absolutely. Well, I read actually, Philip Pullman said he detests the Chronicles of Narnia, which obviously I disagree with him on that, but that's okay. We can disagree. And he wrote this series as literally a response to the Chronicles of Narnia. Which I thought was fascinating. Oh, I said it was fascinating. Stop trying to beat me, Morgan.
You know what's interesting? We went to like some pretty we grew up in like conservative areas in Arkansas, like it's in the Bible Belt. I think I first read this book because I checked it out from the library. And I'm kind of surprised it wasn't on the list of banned books, like in hindsight. And I don't know if it's because of lack of exposure, because it really was more popular like in the UK, and like it was popular in the States, but it didn't have the same kind of clout that like some other books have. So maybe parents they just didn't know enough to be like outraged about it.
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, it won the when it came out, the book that is, when it was published in 1990, it won the Carnegie Medal for children's literature in the UK.
That's a big one.
It's huge, yeah, but you're right. It really didn't translate over as much. And I wonder if that's not just because Christianity is such a big part of America. I mean, I wish it wasn't, but obviously it is. So, I mean, maybe like just important and powerful people at various levels said, I don't think we should be talking too much about this book or pushing this book. And maybe that was just a nudge it needed to be such a slow burner, popularity wise.
Yeah, maybe.
It's funny you mentioned, though, how you read it and our conservative sort of upbringing. The first time I ever saw or heard of His Dark Materials, we were both band nerds. Well, we were both in band. I don't know if we were really band nerds, but there was a band member, and I won't say her name, but I will say that she was gaping, okay? And So but I'm not going to say her name because that's cruel. And she was extremely religious. I assume she still is. And she was reading that series in band.
Hmm.
Yes, and to this day I am confounded and confuddled because as much as I didn't like her, because I didn't like her a ton, she wasn't a stupid person, and I think she was reading the second or third book, and it becomes
Mm.
very clear that this series is anti-religion. I mean, it becomes very clear.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point because there are a lot of commentaries on religion or anti-religion that can be subtle, and his Dark Materials is not one of them. I think they come out very strong from the first book. They talk a lot about the church and the corruption of the church and the bad things that the church is doing. And yes, their version of the church differs from what we think of, as like the Vatican or like the powers that be in our world. But in Lyra's Oxford, they come out strong against the church, don't you think?
Oh yes, absolutely. Well, and that's straight from Philip Pullman. Actually, I've got an amazing quote from him. Girl, this quote, it blew my hair back and blew my shoes off. It is
Ooh.
amazing. Yeah, okay, so this is him. Okay, here it is. The trouble is that all too often in human history, churches and priesthoods have set themselves up to rule people's lives in the name of some invisible God, parentheses, and they're all invisible because they don't exist, in parentheses, and done terrible damage. In the name of their God, they have burned, hanged, tortured, maimed, robbed, violated, and enslaved millions of their fellow creatures, and done so with the happy conviction that they were doing the will of God and they would go to heaven for it.
Mm,
Ooh,
chilling.
Queen. Oh my goodness. I mean, look, if anyone burns in hell, it'll be him. That's amazing. I am obsessed with that quote.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really passionate, and I think he's a really good writer, and I think he's really intelligent, and I think he's really well respected, especially in the international community, because he isn't afraid to take those kind of stances, especially for somebody who writes this sort of children and YA literature. There didn't used to be a lot of people that took those kind of bold stances. We're getting a lot more progressive today, but this book came out in like the 90s or something.
Yeah. Yeah, 1995, the first one was published. Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because, especially when the movie came out more so than the books, there was a lot of backlash in America from the Christian community, especially from the Catholic Church, who I think is most obviously sort of, I guess parodied isn't the right word, but the Magisterium is the name of the church in his Dark Materials.
Yep.
And it seems very like the Catholic Church, more so
Very.
than, say, the Baptists or the Protestants or whoever. So there was a big backlash against it. But, that shit pisses me off because, yeah, it is very atheist. It's no more atheist than the Chronicles of Narnia is Christian, though. And if my faggoty ass can read the Chronicles of Narnia and just get my life, I don't see why they can't read his Dark Materials and at least get something from it.
Oh
I don't know.
yeah. Yeah, there's something for everyone as long as you're open-minded enough to be open to things that have themes that maybe circle back to things that aren't at the source of your well-being or your philosophy or whatever. Like we both love the Chronicles of Narnia, and like
Mhm.
I'm not religious at all. I'm certainly not Christian, and I think it's such a great story with a lot of moral value,
Yes. Yes.
objectively in spite of that.
I agree. I agree. Now there is some iffy stuff. If y'all want to hear about some of the
Yes.
iffy stuff, we do be. I especially recommend the horse and his boy episode,
Yes,
whichever episode that
girl.
is of ours, because girl, we go in on those problematic aspects. They are there, but yeah, I mean, there is something beautiful in the Chronicles of Narnia that everyone can appreciate, and I think there's something quite beautiful in his Dark Materials, which is all about um, which is yielding blindly to authority, which over and over again in human history has been shown to be a bad idea. to me, that's really the crux of it. And, definitely it sends up religion first and foremost because Pullman is such a militant atheist. But you could take that lesson and apply it to anything. You can apply that to your high school principal, to political parties, to the queen bee in your friend group. I mean, whatever. It's just, to me, it's more about questioning authority and thinking outside the box than it is necessarily about saying that God is dead and religion is evil. But I don't mind that message either. So.
Yeah.
Do you happen to remember what His Dark Materials is a quote from? Do you know that?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea.
Well, we mentioned how this series is a response to the Chronicles of Narnia, but the title of the whole series is actually a quotation from Paradise Lost, another Christian classic. If you like, I've got the little quote here. If you'd like to.
Yes, please.
Okay. I'll try to read it very solemnly because this is Paradise Lost after all. This is book 2, around lines 900. Into this wild abyss, the womb of nature and perhaps her grave, of neither sea nor shore nor air nor fire, but all of these in their pregnant causes mixed, confusedly, and which thus much ever fight, unless the Almighty Maker them ordain his dark materials to create more worlds. Into this wild abyss, the wary fiend stood on the brink of hell and looked a while, pondering his voyage, for no narrow frith he had to cross. Now, that's about Satan, but girl, I don't know what it means. I'm not going to front with you. I didn't study it. In fact, this is the first time I read it through, so I kind of stumbled a bit, but it's about Satan and his fall and something.
Yeah.
Unless the Almighty Maker them ordain his dark materials to create more worlds. So
Interesting.
So that's about God making the world into this wild abyss. Huh.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then, honestly, the whole series of His Dark Materials is about remaking the world in a better fashion, free from this like sort of religious fascist regime that like rules over people.
Absolutely, this false god who said he's created the world, which, spoiler alert, we'll get there later, but so it makes sense. So really what Philip Pullman's saying by naming it the His Dark Materials trilogy is he's saying, okay, well, I'm taking the building blocks of the world and I'm, as you say, making another. I'm creating a different world. Perhaps one in which Satan doesn't, get thrown into hell. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah,
well,
fascinating.
So now you didn't reread for this podcast, did you?
I didn't.
Me
I think
neither,
that
Queen.
it's a really great series, and just last year I read La Belle Sauvage, which is a prequel that just came out in 2018 to the series, and I was really motivated to reread it after that book came out because I think he's a great writer. I just didn't make time for it, but I remember it so fondly.
Well, see, and no judgment there. I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page. I also did not reread it, but it's interesting because, I did read the whole series, but Morgie, if you remember when we were doing our, pre-recording talk, I think last week, I didn't remember a damn part of this. I read the whole series, and I guess I didn't like it very much because, honestly, it is little more than a blur to me.
That's fair. Like, it's definitely not for everyone. And I think that it depends on how you relate to the protagonists, the main characters, and if you like them. And in the first book, it's Lyra. And I would say Lyra's wildly lovable. I think she's like a good character, but like she's not my favorite character. And in the second book, you get introduced to like a second protagonist. Oh my gosh, and I need to Google his name. The second book is called
Dudley Squiggly Wings.
Yeah, Dudley from The Subtle Knife. You know him.
Yeah, Dudley. Yeah, what's
No,
his
his
real name?
his name is Will Perry, and
Ah.
I found Will to be, for me, extremely relatable because he came from a different background than Lyra. Lyra was abandoned by her parents and grew up sort of like in this religious orphanage situation at a school, but she was also a very, very privileged child. Um, and Will came from a very different background. And so I don't know why, but I just gravitated towards him in lieu of Lyra. So when he became sort of a main character, I enjoyed more the story.
Hmm. Let's see. I remember liking Lyra quite a lot. I remember loving the world, that sort of fancy orphanage that she grew up in. That's something
Yeah.
I just think I was interested in that. And you were mentioning world building earlier. I do distinctly remember being like, give me more of this world. This world is gorgeous. And I wanted to kind of like wallow in the absurd what's the word, like old money, you know what I mean, like wooden paneling and like deep carpeting and
Mm,
beautiful jewel tones and like Oxford, right? Doesn't she grow up in
yeah.
Oxford? Isn't it called Oxford?
Yep. It's
And
called
it's very,
Lyra's Oxford. Yeah. It's like
yes.
everything's like an alternate reality from our own, but yes, Oxford.
And girl, I mean, I'm all about that. Give me a old school institution of higher learning. I don't care which world we're in, if it's Lyra's or ours or whatever. I will spend all my time there.
Yes.
So I liked Lyra. I don't have fond memories of Will, so maybe I might disagree with you on that. But I'm going to try to reread the second book before we do, because we're doing, listeners, an episode on each of the three books, and I'll try to reread that so I can have some more definite opinions about him. But I thought Lyra was amazing. I mean, who doesn't love a strong female protagonist? Plucky and headstrong and maybe a little too headstrong, maybe a little
Yeah.
irritating sometimes, but
I, I think a really good word to describe Lyra is defiant. Because like a lot of the things she does for like a pretty good reason. But I think that no matter what reason Lyra did something for, as long as Lyra thought it was right, she would do it anyways, like good or bad or somewhere in the gray area. And I think she has a little bit of that. Um, and I like that about her, that she's, like you said, she's really plucky. She's ready to get out there and like make changes and like take a stance, and like she doesn't take shit from adults, and she's just like she wants to make the world a better place. And I think that's a really good quality for her, but she's just surrounded by like her environment, like you said, is so amazing. And like I think she has quite a journey from where she starts into where she ends, like two books later.
hmm hmm well, she grows up. I mean, I do think kind of a sub story, a subplot, I suppose, in the series is kind of it's a coming of age tale for both of them, you
Oh yeah.
know. And we'll get more into that, I suppose, as we get deeper into the books. But that's definitely something that's going on. Is they lose their various. Well, Lyra has more innocence than little MacGuffin or whatever, but they lose the innocence they have, and they really are forced to look at the wider world and decide if that's the world they want to live in. Which, of course, is the question we all have to ask ourselves sooner or
Yep.
later. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And another part of the world building that really appealed to me, and one of the smartest things I think is the introduction of the daemon as like this animal sidekick that is literally your soul external. It's like next level of wearing your heart on your sleeve.
Yeah.
And I found it like such an empathetic choice to make, and just really draws you into the characters even more because like, oh, that's my dog, she's a little sad right now. um
Aw.
Ellie. But just like the horror around trying to like separate a child from this piece of their soul is so like gut wrenching and really effective.
I agree. Well, and I also think, it was a really smart choice on Pullman's part because who doesn't love that, what's your spirit animal question or find your spirit
Totally.
guide or, take this fucking BuzzFeed quiz and I'll tell you what your Patronus is. It's like,
Yep.
it's that idea, but sort of writ large, because everyone has one. They're all different. And though they're the soul of the person, they all kind of have their own, what's the word? Well, their own being, their own selfhood in a way, right? They can do things that their human may not necessarily want them to do, or they can act up, and it's an interesting character choice. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because there is a preview for the TV series, which you can find online. It's very short, can't be more than 2 minutes long, I think. And they don't show the Damons at all.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Oh, I was thinking maybe it's because the CGI isn't finished yet, and maybe people are learning their lesson. Most recently, after they showed us that broke down genie from the Aladdin movie, maybe they were like, "Girl, let's not even show them anything until that shit is polished, because people will rip us to bits."
Yeah, I guess that's a good reasoning behind it. I can't imagine they would cut that out of the story altogether, because I think it's extremely integral. Do you agree?
Oh, 100%. They can't cut it out. They can't. They might do some, something interesting with it. Maybe, I don't know. They could do it. What if they did hand puppets? What if instead of little CGI things, it was just little sock?
I love it. They're going to bring
yeah.
Lamb Chop back.
Wait, what was that? I'm sorry. I turned on my damn van. What did you say?
I said they're going to bring Lamb Chop back and kind of integrate it.
I'm so into that. It is, after all, the song that never ends. It goes on and on, my friend. People started singing it. They didn't know what it was. And they're forever singing it because it is the song that never ends.
Okay. Okay.
Enough of that. That song is ended. We're probably aging ourselves even by bringing up Lamb Chop.
We're old as hell. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, I've never seen it. You just told me about it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We haven't talked much at all about this HBO adaptation, which actually is the whole reason for us covering this.
Yeah, it's true.
So it was announced last year that there was going to be, or around last year, that there was going to be this His Dark Materials adaptation, and it was a BBC production, and they were going to partner with some network in America, and they chose to partner with HBO, which they've partnered with some of these major outlets for other things, so that made sense for them. But they've kept it so very hush-hush. And around the time of the premiere of Game of Thrones this year, which I think was back in March or April, I can't remember, they released this teaser trailer as part of their trailer lineup before you could watch the show on HBO Go. Anyways, that's where I watch it. And I was just so surprised at that they had a trailer and that progress had been made, because I had heard so little about it. Yeah.
I mean, they snuck it in, and they've already ordered a second season of it. So BBC One is producing it, in the UK. Forgive me, you may have just said that. But they've already ordered a second season. So even though they haven't really publicized it the way you would think perhaps they would have, they seem to be very gung-ho about it. And here's my question about HBO. Do you think, since they made the 2007 Nicole Kidman debacle, and it was very kiddie, they cut out some of the darker themes, they made it very child and family friendly, and it failed miserably. Do you think this HBO version is going to be, more like what we think of as an HBO show?
I don't, though, because it's produced by BBC.
Fair. That's fair. So HBO is leaning into children's?
I think it'll be less children. It'll be not as kiddie as the movie that we don't like, but I think that it won't be as dark as some other shit that they actually produce, Sharp Objects. Like, Sharp Objects was a book by Gillian Flynn that they did, and they held nothing back. It's a fucking dark story, and they went for it. And because they don't have the production, they're just streaming it, right? Like, it's just going to air on their network. It's probably not going to be 100% dark. I'm going to go with like 70% dark.
Okay, so we're not going to see Miss Coulter get raped by an armored polar bear. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, and that's
Probably.
canon too.
Yeah. No, that doesn't happen. It is a children's series. I mean, for those of you who haven't read it, if you were, if you're not a religious person or you're an open-minded religious person, it's perfectly appropriate to read to your children. I mean, there's no rape. There's a little bit of violence, especially near the end, but it's not like graphic, Game of Thrones violence or anything like that. It's interesting. I just feel like I guess I'm not super familiar with everything HBO has ever done. Well, I mean, I know I'm not, but it feels like it's a different direction in the kind of programming. Would you agree?
I 100% agree. And honestly, it feels like such a cash grab to, number one, have something fantasy that's relevant on their television lineup, and also because of like name recognition, because there's two particularly big names that I think they're interested in the cast.
So I assume you're not talking about sweet, amazing, talented Daphne Keane, who's playing Lyra. She was the little Wolverine in Logan, if y'all don't recognize her name. And she's not a huge name yet, but damn, that little girl is talented.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Me too. I think she's gonna fucking chew that roll up. But who are you talking about?
James McAvoy is playing Lord Asriel. And we
go ahead.
Oh, no, you're going to say James McAvoy?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he's fuckable, incredibly talented. And Lord Asriel is one of my favorite characters in the series. I mean, he's such a cool, he's like a cool uncle type, even though he may or may not be someone's father. But
who may or may not kill your friends at will if he thinks it's for the greater good.
I mean, sometimes difficult decisions have to be made, but you can't. He may do some ethically iffy things, but he's cool though. He's a cool guy.
He is cool.
Yeah.
And I think James McAvoy will probably do a good job, so I'm excited. Mm-hmm. And then the other big name that people are pretty buzzed about is Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's coming in to play Lee Scoresby, well-known Texan.
Yes, aeronaut. Yes. I am so excited for him. I'm excited to see him blowing up in general because obviously who doesn't love Lin-Manuel Miranda? I guess best known for Broadway, for Hamilton, and for In the Heights. But he is also in the upcoming adaptation of the Name of the Wind series.
Yeah, and he, like us, is a huge Patrick Rothfuss fan, and he's been shipping that for so long. Like, what an incredible person to have on your team who's like, we need this, we need it fucking now, and we need it to be great. I'm so excited about that.
I am too. He's going to be amazing. And that, the Lee Scoresby role, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not like a huge role, though, is it? Is it a giant role?
It's not a huge role, but I wonder if they're going to make it bigger because of him.
Yeah. I mean, and might as well, frankly. I know that season 2 is only 8 episodes. I don't know how long season 1 is.
I found the same problem. Like, how come we know how many are in the second season but not in the first one? Like, that's a baffling piece of information.
Can I just say, I would like to take a stance right now. It's now HBO, BBC One. They're not the only people that do this. Netflix is horrible for this. But can you just tell us when the fuck shit is coming out? I am tired of these mystery drops. Now, granted, as people who run a podcast that's about, fantasy and pop culture, TV and movies, like, it's especially important to us. But, I mean, why? What is so great about just drop? Beyonce has changed everything with her surprise drops. And I'm not being anti-Beyonce here, but I mean, we don't all have to be Beyonce. In fact, we can't be. So just give it up, HBO. Yeah, give it up, BBC.
We need a fucking heads up. You're right. And they're being so wishy-washy and they just keep saying like late 2019 and it's like please be more specific. Also, what's happening? Are they just like not done with production? Do they have to reshoot a bunch of stuff? Like, can you please keep your fans in the loop or you're going to like lose customers?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I just thought it might be because of the CGI, because this is going to be a very CGI heavy show because
Yep.
of all the daemons and also various other special effects, dust, and I'm sure the environments are going to be partially CGI. They're armored polar bears, which obviously you have to do that on computer. So maybe they're not sure how long it's going to take to make those visual effects. I mean, that's possible anyway, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think I thought a lot about the CGI when thinking about like the characters and the animals, and I didn't really think about the dust, which is literally probably one of the most integral things in the story. And that's a thing they need to do really well. Like it needs to be really fucking beautiful because it's really important and because that's the standard of TV that they have created.
Absolutely. For those who haven't, what should we define dust, or is that too much of a spoiler, Morgie? Do you think?
Um I
Am
don't
I
think so. I don't know.
okay?
What do you think?
Well, I've kind of variously spoiled the whole series already, so um, let's just. So dust is this really initially mysterious and valuable and seemingly rare material. It looks like dust, but it's like literally consciousness given physical form, right? So
Yeah.
it's what makes conscious life in this parallel world. So it's the dark material in a way. I mean, it is the building block of consciousness, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
Is that
That's
fair?
pretty high level. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. And you're right, it needs to be absolutely gorgeous. But look, here's the thing. Now, uh, what was that movie with Oprah in it? And we did an episode on it, and it's a classic children's novel. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Madeline
it's got
L'Engle,
Wrinkle in Time.
Wrinkle
Yes,
Inside.
thank you. That just put a new wrinkle in my brain. I could not think of it. I mean, look, that movie was nothing but special effects, and they were able to tell us when the damn thing was going to premiere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, so really, yeah, maybe it's because of the CGI, but look, now that's not really an excuse because Hollywood is able to churn it out and tell us when it's coming. So I don't understand why TV thinks they can't do that. But I'm mad about it.
I totally agree.
Now, we haven't mentioned yet, Mrs. Coulter is played by a woman by the name of Ruth Wilson. Now, are you familiar with Ruth Wilson?
I have no idea who this bitch is.
So Ruth Wilson was a very famous NCAA basketball player in the 80s. No, that's bullshit. That's not true.
I was like, I'm looking at her IMDb. It feels not right.
Yeah, no. Look, I looked through her IMDb too. I didn't even write down any of the stuff because I was like, girl, I have not heard of one of these things. So
Yeah. She's super British.
yes. And, sometimes English actors just don't cross the pond very much. So this is, in a way, for a lot of American audience members, this will be our introduction to Ruth Wilson. And so for me, she's a question mark. I mean, I suppose I could have gone on YouTube and tried to look up stuff, but girl, it's hot and I don't have that kind of time. So for me, she's just a question mark. But I do think she's stunningly beautiful.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was literally waiting for a moment to say, but I really like her face.
yeah. Yeah, she's like a classic American beauty to me. Well, she's not American, but she's a classic beauty.
She's gorge.
She's like Mick Parker levels of beauty. Oh no, that's too far. Now I'm full of hyperbole. I shouldn't do that.
Okay, girl.
Okay, girl, what are you trying to say? I
Oh,
don't know,
nothing. You're
Morgie. Like,
beautiful. We're all beautiful.
thank you so much. I am beautiful. Period. End of thought. Moving on.
Mm.
Um, you're beautiful too, but I'm still the beauty. So what do you think? Are you are you are you excited for this show? I mean,
You know, I'm a fucking sucker. So it's like people can like do shitty things to things I love over and over and over and over again, and I'm always like ready to jump at the next iteration. Like I like just am so I just get forgive so much forgiveness, so I'm just ready for them to do a good job and I'm open to it.
You know what? I agree with you. Even though, well, partially, I'm excited for the show because I feel like it hasn't been adapted well. Like that 2007 movie should be struck from history. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we should chisel it out of all the stone tablets because it was an abomination. You know, and it was very disappointing. I mean, we both saw it in theaters. I think you said you saw it in theaters too. I was pretty excited for it at the time, and maybe part of the reason I don't I'm not a big fan now of the whole series is because that movie was so horrible, you know? So I'm excited for it because I want to see it done well. Even though it's not my favorite series of all time, it's certainly so much better than that movie made it appear. So I hope they just do it a bit more credit, you know.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that with a pretty solid cast lineup, I trust in people like James McAvoy and Lin-Manuel, and like you said, I think this little girl that's gonna play Lyra, she's got a really
Yeah.
budding career, Daphne, and
Daphne Keane. Yeah, it's
I
a great name. Ugh.
think it's really promising, and because HBO bought it, I mean, HBO generally does pretty solid programming, so I'm hoping and leaning towards that it's gonna be good.
Yeah, I think at least the first couple seasons are going to be good. I can't promise you the last season of his Dark Materials is going to be
Girl,
good. Yeah, I'm still beating that drum because I'm still pissed.
girl,
I
we'll
am
never be over
still
it.
pissed. No, I really, well, it'll take a while. I do have one more question for you, though. The 2007 movie, you know, we talked about how it diluted the anti-religious elements. Do you think that this upcoming series will also dilute those elements?
Hmm. No.
Okay, and done. Podcast over. Thanks
We
for listening.
solved it. No,
Um,
I don't think it will simply because the UK has a very different mindset than America in general. And I think because it's a BBC One production, they're not one BBC's not one to shy away from like stuff like that, don't you think?
I agree. Well, I think less so that they're not one to shy away, and more so that they're one to stick to the source material. You know, that
Yes.
I feel like BBC consistently does a great job, sometimes too good a job, of bringing movies to the screen. I mean, they really love to get all those details in. So yes, I agree with you. I think it really is going to have that backbone of anti-authority, anti-religion, frankly, let's just go ahead and say it, anti-Christian sort of sentiment. Um, and I also think that because HBO is bringing it to the U.S., I mean, as you said, they are not producing it, you know. But I think the fact that they're vouching for it and they want to bring it and make it part of their channel and their programming tells me that it's going to have some of that maturity and some of that darkness, which primarily comes from that anti-religious message. So I fully expect it to have every bit of it, you know.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that's a really good point that BBC has a track record of doing source material justice. And I think one of the best examples of that is their Pride and Prejudice miniseries that they did like back in the early 90s, starring Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy. And like it was such a spot on just like translation of book to screen that like it's a classic. It's like a BBC classic. Like there will never be another retelling better than that version because they just fucking nailed it.
Girl, yeah. Every single fucking button that was in the novel was in the TV show. I mean,
Yep.
they didn't miss every petticoat, every stick, every speck of dirt. I mean, it was all there. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did a good job. They're good.
I'm I'm interested, man. I will tell you, I can't, you know, as we talked about in our Game of Thrones season 8 episode, the minute I finished that series, I canceled my HBO subscription. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, as of, what my life is looking like right now, I don't plan on resubscribing to HBO just for this series, but who knows? I mean, you're a current subscriber, aren't you, on
I
HBO?
Well, I don't pay for it, but
Oh,
I do
sure.
have a login.
Oh, because you know the right people. Um, so if you tell me that, when it comes out, whenever that happens, that, it's good and you're enjoying it, I would definitely consider getting back on. Because there is some other, I mean, I would watch Watchmen, which is on HBO right now. Like, I'm not, I wouldn't watch just for that, but I'm interested in that show. And I also have heard great things about Chernobyl. So, you
Yeah.
know, more and more HBO is drawing me back in. I have to say, they're doing a good job post Game of Thrones.
They're trying. They're trying. They're really ramping up their programming. But the good news about HBO is like you could just save it for like next year. Like in January, February, you could be like, it's time to get it. There's like 5 or 6 shows that have like wrap seasons up that you could like binge if you wanted to.
That's a great point, especially since, I mean, it's not like it can be spoiled for me.
Right.
So, yeah, I might just wait, and see. But I think it probably will pull off. Now, do you think they will lose subscribers because of this?
No. I mean, I think they probably lost subscribers when Game of Thrones got done because I think there are a ton of people that only tuned in for that.
I agree. But, I mean, frankly, their audience, I'm sure there are many very devout Christians who subscribe to HBO, but I don't know what they watch because it's not a very family friendly channel. So I'm with you. I don't think they'll lose any subscribers. I do expect, though, that there's going to be some kind of Christian uprising, some kind of pitchforks and torches are going to be lit because people, religious people, just can't get over this series and how much it hates them. But.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. I mean, especially on the heels of the outcry over Good Omens.
how they yeah, how they wrote that petition, signed that petition to get Netflix not to air Good Omens, and Netflix was like, you know what, Christians, okay, we shall not air Good Omens, which is
They
great
did.
because it doesn't air on Netflix.
So
So
funny. Yeah, they had the greatest responses, and they also sent out like a tweet, and they were like, "We'll take down Good Omens just as soon as Amazon Prime takes down Stranger Things."
exactly. It's so embarrassing. I mean, look, that's a mistake that can happen to anyone. We don't know every book of the Bible. Christians don't know what streaming channel things are streaming on. I mean, we all have different areas of knowledge, and that's cool. But yeah, I laughed real hard because we called that shit, right? When we did our Good Omens episode, we
Yep.
were like, oh, people are gonna be mad as hell. I did not see that they were gonna make such a silly mistake, and I'm delighted that they did.
Yeah,
But yeah, yeah.
it was
I mean,
wonderful.
that kind of thing is so predictable. It's so, the minute you hear, yeah, well, it's predictable because it's all based on a holy book, right? So, if it goes against the holy book and it's not violence, some Christian's going to be mad about it. So, easy to predict. I shouldn't pat us on the back too much. But we did predict it, and someone should give us a cookie.
They should. We earned it.
We did. I prefer oatmeal raisin.
I had a cookie today, but it was peanut butter.
That's disgusting. That is disgusting.
It was
Wash your mouth out.
good.
Don't you lie to me. Peanut butter fucking cookies. Gross.
Wow. Well, I think that we covered that you're an asshole and also this topic really thoroughly.
What? Well, we didn't cover it that thoroughly, but it is true. I am an asshole. I mean, I can't argue that. Do you have anything to plug this week, Morgie?
Girl, I hadn't had time to do a damn thing. I did recently pick up Agents of Shield though, which I never watched before, and
Yes.
have been enjoying that. It's a lot of ground to cover, so I'm like not far at all, but it's a really good like when I have time to watch it show.
And you know what? I think that's a great plug because people, if binge watchers can get on and binge, what are there, 5 seasons? 4 or
Girl,
5
yeah, I
seasons?
think so. It's a lot.
Maybe 6. I don't even know if that shit's ongoing anymore. I have to tell you, seasons like 2 through 4 or something, like the middle of the series, so good. I was obsessed with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for a minute. Yes.
Okay, I look forward to that.
There are a couple little twists and turns, which I shan't spoil, but there are a couple of twists and turns that will have your wig flying right off your head, girl.
Awesome. I love that. That's gonna be good.
Where do you watch that? What service?
It's all on Netflix.
Is it really?
It is.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So my plug is weird. It's really just me talking about my life, but
I want to hear.
oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you do. Listeners may not, but well, they have no power. So, this last week, I gathered my first produce from my 10-acre homestead. Blueberries are fruiting all over my land. I have conservatively 20,000 blueberry plants. I have so many that, yeah, and they just grow wild on my land. And so I collected my very first harvest of lowland blueberries, and it was so cute. I went out and I put them in a little basket.
Aww.
And they were very small because it's the beginning of the season for blueberries where I'm at. But I shared them with my family, and they were so good, and I fed my sisters and my mom, and I just had the cutest little time with it. So I guess I'm plugging blueberries. or maybe I'm plugging self-sufficiency. Or maybe I'm plugging Parker_Homestead, which is the name of my Instagram account.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listeners, please follow along on Mick's journey. He's just a little blueberry baby today, but he's got big plans, and it's going to be fun to follow along.
Oh, queen. And you know what? I get out there, and I haven't even posted a lot of my foolish videos, because I get out there and I toke a little bit, and then nature is just so magical. I watched a giant caterpillar shit on itself last week, and I just thought it was a miracle. I was oohing and awing. I mean, I'm feeling the magic, and I can't wait for you to come visit, Morgie. You're going to love it.
I can't wait either. So what was that handle one more time?
It is Parker, Parker _homestead on Instagram. Come check it out.
Awesome. You guys follow him on there, and while you're there, give me a follow at Morganized Mess. That's where I also post about blueberries, but I just buy them at the grocery store.
Girl, don't be fronting. Don't be riding my blueberry coattails right now. No, you mostly post about like literature and yoga and wigs
Dogs.
and your dogs. Yes, your adorable pups.
Yeah,
I mean, they're both Instagrams full of life and love. So, you know, if you get tired of us being bitchy and stuff, I mean, we're much sweeter on Instagram.
It's true. We are. Yeah. We're much better there.
Yeah.
But we also have pages on all of the social media channels for Beauty and the Bitch podcast. You can find us basically anywhere at B&B Cast, or just search out Beauty and the Bitch and you'll find those pages.
Yeah, you can even find us on YouTube. We have every single episode of this here podcast.
Except for like just one.
Well, actually, I think it's like 2 now. I think it's like 2.
Fuck.
Yeah, I know. It's a catastrophe. But look, we've put out over 100. We're up to like, I think this is episode 109 or something. So look, y'all, there's over 100 episodes on YouTube. So do not complain. No one has complained. But do not be the first to complain. Mostly every episode's there.
We're doing our very best, and like sometimes it's not really good, but it's all we have to give.
Yeah, well, as I said at the very beginning of the episode, we're just shitbirds, so we do the best we can, but our best isn't very good. You know.
I love you, you little shitbird.
Oh, I love you too, you little shitbird. Get out of here.
And we love all of you little shitbirds out there everywhere.
We do. Y'all are the cutest little shitbirds. And you know, I misspoke earlier. Y'all do have power. If y'all write in and comment, let us know, give us your feedback. I was just kidding. We really do listen, and we very much do care. And you know, if you've got positive feedback, y'all should give that on iTunes. You should write us a little review. Give us a little 5-star review.
5 stars?
Mm-hmm. Don't be coming to us with no 2-star review just because we're not Christians.
Don't bother.
Geez Louise, go read a Bible, Lord.
Oh my God.
So offensive. I'm sorry.
But either way, we love you guys. So thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye, baby. Bye.
Beauty and the Bitch. you have a home? Beauty in the Bed.
You
look.
Beauty in the bed.
Beauty in the Bed.
Beauty in the bed.